across deserts, forests, and restricted zones.
Got it.
Something keeps appearing where it shouldn't. Crashed objects, strange figures, and unexplained encounters caught on camera. Not one incident, but a pattern. And what you're about to see is only part of it.
Seen that?
UfO!
The Roswell crash of 1947 is the one that everyone knows, but fewer people are aware that another object reportedly came down at the same time, out on the plains of San Augustine in Catron County, New Mexico. The government labeled it a weather balloon and moved on, but witnesses told a different story. A rancher named Barney Barnett and several archaeologists who were present described craft and non-human occupants in terms that were too specific and too consistent to dismiss easily. Then, in 2024, a group of tourists visiting that same stretch of land found a metallic, dome-structured craft still emitting smoke from what looked like fresh damage. A second object at the same location, decades later, felt like more than coincidence, so they kept their distance. Desert visitors. The Atacama Desert is one of the clearest places on Earth for stargazing, but one man saw something there long before night even arrived. He had traveled to the region for its open skies, but what greeted him in broad daylight stopped him cold. Parked in the distance was a metallic craft, unmistakably alien in shape. Standing beside it were two gray figures, not very large, but unsettling enough to keep him frozen in place. He made no sudden moves and drew no attention to himself. Whatever they were doing there, he didn't wait to find out. He quietly slipped away and never looked back. Escorted out. Not many pieces of footage managed to capture something this precise and this unnerving at the same time. A clip filmed at Fort George showed the interior of old military grounds in a way most people never get to see. A container-style vehicle sat parked in the open, with several uniformed officers positioned around it like it was standard procedure. Then the camera caught something that changed the whole tone. An alien figure, slowly moving forward, guided by one of the officers toward a separate section of the compound. The others held their positions. Everything looked calm and rehearsed, which somehow made the entire scene feel even harder to make sense of. Same craft. In 2017, sighting reports of an identical UFO came in from completely different parts of the world, and that detail alone made people stop and pay attention. Deep inside Japan's Aokigahara forest, an explorer came across a smooth, shiny craft resting between the trees. There were no impact marks, no damage. It hadn't crashed. It had landed. Moments after he noticed it, the craft lifted silently and disappeared. Around the same period, someone in Nevada's desert recorded what looked like the exact same object, rising from the ground and vanishing into the sky. Two people, two locations, one craft. What was it looking for? And did it find it? 1947 evidence.
Got it.
A video claiming to document a 1947 UFO crash began circulating online and refused to fade into the background like most clips do. The footage showed a large, saucer-shaped object resting on open ground, surrounded by military officers who moved around it with clear purpose. Nearby, a humanoid figure lay motionless, while others appeared to examine the surrounding area with careful attention. The visual quality of the footage carried the weight of something genuinely old, which only deepened the debate over whether it was authentic or carefully staged. Even now, decades later, nothing in the clip has been definitively explained, and that unresolved quality is exactly what keeps it circulating.
I can't get it clear.
Black craft. Back in 2014, a hiker moving through the Ponderosa pine forest near Flagstaff, Arizona, came across a scene that immediately felt wrong. Resting between the trees was a large, rounded black craft, one side clearly damaged, with smoke still rising steadily from the impact point. He approached carefully and captured it on video, scanning the area for any sign of occupants. Finding none, he stood at the edge of the craft and considered two possibilities. Whoever had been inside was still in there, or the craft had been running on autopilot when something went wrong and caused the crash. Either way, he never looked inside. Some questions are better left unanswered. Silent exit. An anonymous user posted this clip to TikTok without any explanation, and the footage itself offered very little context to fill the gap. It had been filmed from a hidden position outside what appeared to be a military facility, a large structure with a wide opening at one end. From inside that opening, a saucer-shaped craft emerged slowly, hovering just above the ground before beginning a controlled vertical rise. Every movement was smooth and deliberate, nothing like the erratic behavior typically associated with these sightings. As the craft gained altitude, the recording continued, but the final seconds raised more questions than anything that came before them. No one could agree on what it was doing there. Taller than soldiers. The soldiers in this clip weren't transporting equipment, they were escorting something that walked beside them. The figure moved on two legs and had a general human outline, but nothing else about it lined up. Its arms and legs were disproportionately long, its head completely bare, and its eyes were oversized and deeply unsettling even through the footage. It stood noticeably taller than every uniformed officer moving alongside it, yet the group maintained a calm, almost rehearsed formation, quiet, deliberate, clearly trying not to draw attention. Shortly after the clip emerged, reports indicated that official channels moved quickly to contain it. Footage like this has a way of making institutional silence feel a lot more loaded than it used to. Beach recovery. This video arrived without a source and spread fast, showing a small team in hazmat suits working on a beach to retrieve a compact, unusual object from the sand. The craft wasn't large, but its shape and surface were immediately distinctive. The exterior was perfectly smooth, with no visible control panels, wiring, or mechanical components of any kind, making it genuinely unclear how something like that could function at all. Many viewers pointed to Bob Lazar's accounts, noting the parallels to what he had described years earlier.
There's no wiring that connects any of the subcomponents together whatsoever. They just have to be in the immediate vicinity. The stuff is borderline magic.
Once the team placed a black cover over the object and moved to transport it, the footage cut off leaked before anyone could suppress it completely. Casual exchange. Nothing about the setting of this clip suggested anything out of the ordinary, and that contrast is exactly what made it so difficult to process. A man stood just a few steps away from an alien-like figure and, without any visible hesitation, held out food toward it. The figure reached forward and accepted it, appearing to consume it on the spot, while someone nearby captured the entire moment on camera. The surroundings looked completely normal. No panic, no urgency, nothing theatrical. Just two beings sharing what looked like a completely routine exchange. The casualness of it was what stayed with people long after the clip ended. Nothing about it felt like it should be possible. Radar confirmed. Old footage doesn't usually make the rounds the way this 1996 clip did, but what it appeared to show gave people a reason to keep sharing it. Filmed over White Sands Beach in New Mexico, it captured a glowing object moving at significant speed before visibly losing stability in the air. It seemed to briefly correct itself, then dropped. What made this particular sighting harder to dismiss than most was the supporting detail radar systems at both White Sands Military Test Range and Holloman Air Force Base had reportedly tracked an unidentified object executing maneuvers that no known aircraft could replicate right before it came down within restricted land. Viewers watching the footage today believe they're looking at exactly that object. Aligning events. In 2020, a military unit operating in the Amargosa Desert in Nevada came across a large, dark, metallic craft with a dome cockpit at its center. What they recovered from the site included alien remains multiple, none of them showing any signs of life. The timing of the discovery overlapped with the early months of the global pandemic, which officials reportedly used to suppress any footage or reporting that came close to surfacing. It was held for 3 years. Then, in 2023, former intelligence officer David Grush took the account to Congress and stated under oath that the United States government had recovered non-human biological material from a crash site.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
That testimony didn't come from an anonymous online post. It came from a sworn statement delivered to elected officials. Running figures. About 3 miles from his home in Rook County, Maine, a man came across something in a forest clearing that he had no framework to explain. Sitting in the open was a massive black craft, not the metallic silver that appears in most sightings, but a deep, flat black that seemed to absorb the light around it rather than reflect it. What unsettled him more than the craft itself were the figures surrounding it. Multiple alien-like beings moved rapidly in different directions, some appearing to scatter, others searching. When 2 of them began moving toward him, he didn't stop to consider what they wanted. He ran. Dark figure. Every morning, the same farmer from Baragan, Romania, drove the same stretch of road to reach his field, and nothing about it had ever given him reason to stop. That changed the morning he spotted something sitting flat and dark in the distance. The shape was unmistakable to him, wide, low, and disc-like in a way that no farming equipment or vehicle could account for. Standing just a short distance from it were several dark figures, completely still. He slowed. He looked, but he never stopped. Whatever was out there, he decided the distance between them was exactly where it needed to stay. Blackout night. In May 2020, residents in Mage, Brazil watched glowing orbs drift across the sky before a loud impact echoed through the area. Someone who went to investigate found a dark, rounded object at the crash site with blue lights still active along its surface. Standing just a few feet away in the darkness was a figure thin, unfamiliar, and completely still. The person filming didn't stay. Military units arrived shortly after and sealed off the zone entirely. What followed was harder to explain than the crash itself. A full internet blackout across the area lasted through the night, cutting off any attempt to share footage or reports. The object briefly appeared on Google Maps in the days that followed. Then it was quietly removed. Dome-shaped structure. Nearly 2 decades ago, an archaeologist working through South Africa's Great Karoo region was there for the fossils, one of the richest sites of early life on the planet. What he hadn't accounted for was what he found beyond the fossil beds. Resting in the open was a craft with a smooth, dome-shaped upper structure. Nothing geological, nothing man-made. Standing in front of it were 2 figures, moving in his direction with slow, unhurried steps. He kept the camera on them as they closed the distance. Then the footage ended abruptly, without any indication of what happened in the seconds after the recording stopped. That absence is what people find most difficult to move past. Platform descent. A 2007 video opens with a crowd already moving not towards something exciting, but away from something they hadn't expected to see, standing in an open field. In the distance sat a craft that matched no civilian or military design anyone could place. Then, the underside opened. A platform extended slowly downward, and a slender figure stepped onto it, pausing to take in its surroundings in a slow, deliberate scan. The crowd had been edging closer out of curiosity, but the moment that figure appeared, the calculation changed entirely. They turned and ran not in panic exactly, but with the particular urgency of people who had just decided they didn't need a closer look. Tank subject. Scientists are going to need to account for this one eventually. Leaked footage showed what appeared to be a sealed containment tank. Thick glass panels, controlled environment, clearly not standard lab equipment. As the camera moved closer, a small face became visible through the glass. The features were faint, but present, fragile-looking, diminished, like whatever was inside had been there for a long time. Viewers quickly connected the footage to Project Aquarius, a classified program that allegedly involved the recovery of non-human beings from crash sites. One of those beings was reportedly designated EBE-1. Whether this tank held something connected to that program or something else entirely, nobody in an official position has chosen to address it. Basketball court. After the Roswell incident, a footage began circulating that took the conversation somewhere completely unexpected. The image allegedly showed an alien figure on a basketball court inside Area 51, surrounded by military personnel, casual, almost routine in framing, which was somehow more disorienting than any dramatic scene would have been. The details were blurred enough to prevent confirmation, but clear enough to keep people looking. No source was ever verified, no official response was ever issued, and the image was never conclusively proven to be fabricated either. Even now, people pull it apart frame by frame, trying to land on a definitive answer. Drop your comments below. What does it look like to you? Abyss discovery. An Instagram user named Abbas Abyssnina from Jordan posted a video that moved fast across the internet and immediately split viewers into two camps. He stood in front of a massive metallic structure, half buried in a remote stretch of desert, its visible surface showing clear signs of impact damage. The shape matched what most people would describe as a flying saucer, wide, smooth, and partially swallowed by the ground. He didn't share the exact location, which became the central point of debate. Without coordinates to verify, people couldn't agree on whether they were looking at a genuine crash site or an elaborate prop placed in the right setting. That one missing detail was enough to keep the argument alive. Rocket Pictures documentary. A man who identified himself only as Victor shared footage that would go on to become one of the most debated clips in UFO research history. He kept his identity concealed throughout, but the material he provided surfaced in a 1997 Rocket Pictures documentary and showed what he claimed was a living alien held inside a classified government facility. The being appeared in a controlled room, surrounded by what looked like medical monitoring equipment, under direct observation. Researcher Michael Heeman later connected the account to a reported UFO incident in the Kalahari Desert in 1989. Years after its initial release, the footage was remastered, giving a new generation of viewers a sharper, clear look at the same unresolved scene. No explanation. Nobody in the villages of Baluchistan, Pakistan, had ever seen anything fall from the sky the way this object did, and the confusion that followed only deepened once it was on the ground. The craft was metallic in appearance but matched nothing familiar. There were no rotors, no wings, no visible propulsion components, just a smooth, unbroken exterior that gave away nothing about how it had been traveling or where it had come from. The villagers gathered around it, completely at a loss. State authorities arrived shortly after, cordoned off the area, and removed the object without issuing a single statement to the public. No explanation was ever offered. None has come since. Pale figure. Near Nevada, a group driving along a quiet stretch of road didn't think much of the open landscape on either side until something ahead made one of them ease off the accelerator. They pulled over. Stepping out, they watched a pale, impossibly thin figure move slowly across the road directly in front of them. It wasn't walking in any way. They recognized the movement was smooth and gliding, as if the ground beneath it was almost incidental. They were back in the car before any of them said a word. When the video reached the internet, the comments filled quickly, most viewers placing the sighting within the proximity of Area 51 without much hesitation.
Close the trunk! Close the trunk!
Unknown alloy. In California, a man was off-roading through the Mojave National Preserve when the trail ahead opened up onto something that looked like a crash site. A large aircraft had come down hard, the damage was severe, and fire was still working through the wreckage at the point of impact. Once the flames dropped enough to get closer, he moved in and recovered what appeared to be pages from inside the craft. They weren't paper. The material was an unidentified alloy, rigid, lightweight, and unlike anything commercially produced. The symbols printed across them pulled from multiple directions at once: Egyptian script, Mayan imagery, and markings that matched no known language. Whatever wrote those pages was not from here. Arizona cordoned. On the last day of 2024, an abandoned stretch of Arizona highway became the center of something nobody could easily explain away. Reports spread quickly about a black metallic object that had come down and been cordoned off before most people even knew it was there. Two figures in full protective suits moved carefully around it, examining the surface from multiple angles without rushing. A small group stood further back, watching in silence, none of them stepping closer. The object's shape and exterior didn't match any conventional wreckage. No familiar framework, no recognizable components. Whatever it was, the authorities never released an official explanation, or if they had one, they kept it entirely to themselves. Quiet walk. The setting was dim, the camera fixed, and the two figures moved through the frame at a pace that felt almost too unhurried to be anything staged. They walked in a steady line side by side towards something just outside the shot, never pausing, never acknowledging the camera. Their silhouettes were thin and elongated in a way that didn't sit comfortably with any easy explanation. As the clip circulated online, it was consistently tied to claims about classified government programs and undisclosed research into non-human contact. The stillness of the environment made it more unsettling than chaos would have. Viewers kept returning to it, watching those few seconds again, still unsure of what they were actually seeing. River smoke. 3 years ago, a group of tourists navigating the Kinabatangan River in Malaysia saw smoke rising from the forest ahead of them, the kind of thick, concentrated column that doesn't come from a campfire. Once they got close enough to make out what had come down, they stopped their boat. Resting in the tree line was a round, metallic object with a noticeably darker center, partially embedded from the force of impact. The damage was significant, and the smoke and heat still rising from the site made approaching it on foot feel like a bad idea. They stayed on the water and called local authorities instead. What those authorities found or chose to report remains unclear. EBE3 warning. Recorded footage from 1964 allegedly captured something that researchers have spent decades arguing over. The clip showed a being identified in certain circles as EBE3-seated, communicative, and apparently describing something that humanity would one day create, according to those who analyzed the audio and movement.
Finally, tell me, what is this other threat?
The being appeared to reference an intelligence that would eventually exceed human capability in ways that couldn't be fully controlled. The recording quality was poor, but the figure's movements and features remained visible enough to follow. When the footage resurfaced online in recent years, viewers immediately drew the line to artificial intelligence, though others remained focused on the more pressing question of where the original recording actually came from. Brightened frame.
No mames, no mames, no mames, no mames, no mames.
Someone had slipped into a military facility at night and kept their camera running inside a dark underground room, and for most of the footage, there wasn't much to see. Then a sudden flash lit the space for a fraction of a second, and the recording became difficult to follow. In its original form, the clip showed very little, but once someone ran it through a brightening filter and brought the exposure up, a figure became visible standing in the frame, tall, still, unmistakably present in a room that was supposed to be empty. The recording ended with the person running. Watching it back with that detail visible makes the whole sequence feel considerably different the second time through.
Hay una luz ahí bien potente. Empezamos a escuchar ruidos.
Extraterrestrial sphere. Most people had already heard about the Boogosphere that appeared in Colombia in March 2024, the one with the strange surface markings and thermal properties that didn't behave the way any known material should. What fewer people knew was that just months later, something nearly identical turned up in Mogrosso, Brazil. Locals found it sitting close to their homes and immediately sensed it wasn't from anywhere nearby. The sphere was heavy enough that rolling it took real effort, but lifting it was out of the question entirely. They called the authorities, who arrived and removed it without offering any public information about what analysis, if any, was carried out afterward. Turning slowly, a man got the camera up just before it noticed him, and that margin of a few seconds is what the entire clip comes down to. Standing in a low-lit space was a gray, thin figure, its head moving in a slow, deliberate arc that felt fundamentally wrong for anything with a biology resembling ours. The movement was too smooth, too fluid, with none of the slight mechanical resistance that comes with muscle and bone. What made the footage harder to dismiss than most was the image quality. The lighting conditions should have produced grainy, unclear results. But the details came through sharp and unbroken. No edits, no cuts, just one continuous moment of something in the dark turning to look directly at the camera. Window figure. It was a routine inspection, an abandoned house, standard procedure, nothing flagged as unusual going in. The officer moved through the interior methodically until a sound near one of the windows pulled his attention sideways. He turned. Outside, something was already there, positioned at the glass, its gaze fixed directly on him. The head was disproportionately large, the eyes long and black, bearing no resemblance to any creature native to the area. Neither of them moved for a moment. The officer's body cam caught all of it, the shape, the stillness, the locked eye contact. Plenty of people watching the footage later called it an alien encounter, and given what the camera recorded, that explanation was harder to argue against than most would have expected. Deliberate alien. While sweeping through an abandoned site, a military team wasn't expecting to find anything alive in there. But when one of the officers swung his flashlight toward a dark corner, it landed on something that didn't belong. The figure was gray and slight, with dark, almond-shaped eyes that caught the beam directly. Its reaction was immediate. Both arms came up to shield its face, not in the clumsy, startled way, but in the specific, deliberate way of something that understood exactly what a camera was and what it meant to be recorded. That response troubled people more than the sighting itself. An instinct like that isn't something you're born with, it's something you learn. Calm reveal. A man who claimed to have worked inside Area 51 went live without any build-up and started showing photographs. One image after another, he moved through them at an unhurried pace, each one showing something that didn't resemble any known person or creature. He offered almost no commentary, no explanation, no visible reaction to what he was displaying.
Now notice also, this is the body of an alien, where we have 6 ribs that are connected together. They have 3, and the total height is less than 5 feet, and they still look like this, not like you and I.
That calm was the part people found most difficult to sit with. He just showed the photographs to the camera like their content was self-evident and moved on. Whether the images were genuine or constructed, the manner in which he presented them left a specific kind of unease that the footage itself, watched closely, still hasn't resolved. Lunar discovery. Among the details tied to the Apollo 20 mission that were never supposed to reach the public, the figure referred to as the Mona Lisa remains the most difficult to look away from. She was reportedly found inside a structure on the lunar surface, preserved, intact, and arranged in a way that suggested she hadn't simply been left there by accident. At first glance, the features read as almost human delicate, recognizable in their general composition. Then, the specific details registered, and that familiarity started to fall apart. The stillness of the face carried a quality that photographs of ordinary subjects don't produce. Whatever process had preserved her had done so completely, as if time had simply stopped at a specific moment. Pale bluish figure. About 10 miles from Devil's Hole in Nevada, an explorer came across something on the ground that stopped him completely. The figure was small and narrow, with pale bluish skin and a head that was disproportionately large relative to the rest of the body. He filmed it from where he stood and didn't attempt to get closer or touch it, leaving everything exactly as he had found it. When the video went online, the response he hadn't anticipated came quickly, not fascination, but warnings. Viewers familiar with cases like this told him directly that bringing attention to a discovery of this kind wasn't without risk, and that people who had done the same before him had faced serious consequences for it. 3 figures. When 2 small, unusual bodies were brought forward for medical examination, the reaction from everyone in the room was immediate and confused.
Samples available to the world scientific community, and we'll see what's there.
The figures were pale and slight, with elongated heads and only 3 fingers on each hand. Audiences watching the reveal on television and online responded the same way the specialists did, which itself was notable. The Institute for Health conducted detailed skeletal analysis and concluded the remains were complete and unaltered, not artificially constructed. That finding didn't settle the debate, but intensified it. People divided sharply between those who saw it as a legitimate breakthrough, and those who felt the results pointed towards something that existing categories simply weren't built to handle. Perfect formation. Over an empty field, a night vision camera picked up something that most people who watched it couldn't immediately explain away. A disc-shaped craft hovered at low altitude, its outline barely separable from the dark sky around it. Then figures began descending from it, not scattered, not rushing, but moving in near-perfect alignment. No sound carried through the recording, no signal, no command, just that quiet, coordinated movement playing out in complete silence over open ground. If what this footage shows is genuine, the unsettling part isn't the craft. It's the implication that operations like this may have been running regularly, with nobody on the ground any the wiser. Secret labs. An anonymous source uploaded several videos last year that raised questions most viewers weren't sure how to frame. The person behind the footage claimed to have conducted experiments combining animal genetics to produce forms that resembled alien biology, using methods including skin grafting and tissue manipulation to shape the physical outcome. The results were shown in glass containment tanks filled with preservative fluid. Each figure was suspended inside, unmoving, showing no biological response. Whatever the experiments had achieved, they hadn't produced anything living, but the line between what had been engineered and what might be something else entirely wasn't one the footage was willing to draw clearly. Resort sighting. While staying at Whitetail Resort in 2010, a skier noticed something unusual on the landscape roughly 3.5 miles out and started recording. A flat, dark object hovered low above the ground, disc-shaped, motionless, making no sound he could detect at that distance. Moving toward it was a single, slender figure, its body narrow and its gait slow and deliberate. It reached the craft, located a set of steps along its underside, and climbed up without hesitation. Moments after it disappeared inside, the craft lifted cleanly into the sky and was gone. He had the footage. Without it, he said later, he wouldn't have expected a single person to take his account seriously.